The bandwidth for this episode of the AR-15 podcast is sponsored by the Firearms Radio Network. Firearmsradio.tv.
Welcome to episode number 92 of the AR-15 podcast. I'm your host, Reed Snyder, and with me today are my co-hosts, Anthony, the Wise Guy Hardy, JW Ramp. Well, that is if he makes it in time. So this is the podcast about your favorite black rifle, and this show is for you, whether you're building your first AR or you've been building ARs for years. There is something we can all do to take our black rifle to the next level. So, Anthony, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. I feel like I haven't been on the show in like 2 or 3 months, but I know it hadn't been actually been that long, but it feels that way.
Well,
how about you?
A couple of major run-ins with Murphy and Anthony's rules about existence, haven't you?
Yeah, we've had rather a little bit of fun. I tried, let's see, I was on the Guns of Hollywood podcast a couple of weeks ago. I think that may have been the last time that I was here, or maybe before that. I think the last time I lost my internet access and everything. Yeah, that's why I wasn't here a couple weeks ago. And that week, it was like a Wednesday night, and I recorded with the Guns of Hollywood guys, and at the same time, lost all my internet access again. They used Skype audio only, and so the bandwidth on my cell phone was enough. I was able to do it over the cell network on my phone. So that was just crazy.
Well, let's hope that we have an uneventful evening tonight, and that maybe James gets a chance to plug in and join us.
Definitely.
But before we go too far, we want to remind you that it is Brownells who helps make this show possible. Don't forget that Brownells, with their 100% lifetime satisfaction guarantee, is there for you anytime you have a problem, like when you can't remove the taper pins from your new barrel to slip off the front sight base, and now you have to find a new barrel. So that brings us to mention of an awesome opportunity for one of our lucky listeners to win a brand new AR-15 built by the show, and we've got a link in the show notes to episode number 75 where you can go over the specs. Over the course of episode 75 through 92, we've been talking about the build and putting all the parts together, all the pieces that have gone into it, and so now the build is complete. So I'm in the process of sorting out how to videotape the bits and pieces of it so we can bring to you in video format some of the fine details of what it is to build a rifle in a much more presentable format than me telling you about it in just a few words. So,
yeah, I'm really looking forward to those videos, man.
Well, I wouldn't put too much stock in my ability to bring to the table Hollywood production value, because
man, as long as I can see your like the basics of what you're doing, that's gonna make a big difference for me. Seriously.
All right. Well, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Well. So with that in mind, we want to ask you to shop for all of your AR-15 parts at Brownells. And if you can, by going to the AR-15podcast.com website and going to the /parts page, you can shop for your parts at Brownells and help out the show with our new affiliate link through to Brownells. So with that in mind, we would like to point out this week a product of the week. It appears that Magpul is pulling out their MOE line and kind of sprucing it up with some changes. So it is the MOE SL line. And Brownells has a lot, if not all, of these new products for sale as we speak. So the new products add kind of a different look to your AR and bring to you some of the kind of new trends, like the MOE SL grip is a little more like the MOE K2, so it's getting that angle change, giving you more of an AK style, I believe. So it's a little more comfortable than what a lot of people feel the standard A2 grip is like. So we want to suggest you go over there and take a look at the MOE SL line, and if you really like it, head over to Brownells and get yourself a few pieces of furniture.
Ah, that handguard is really nice looking. I love the look of that thing.
Yeah, it kind of wraps up front around your front sight base. It's a real different look from your standard MOE handguard.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that it is compatible, the entire line's compatible with their new, what is it, M-Lock slot. So,
Yeah.
you know, that's going to be I think, a strong contender with all of the Magpul support to what we would see in the Keymod lines and a lot of different manufacturers. So I'm kind of rooting for Magpul when it comes to that M-Lock system to at least give us some consumer choice between the two kinds of accessory add-on systems. So with that, don't forget to check out the show notes for that link. But let's move on to tonight's main topic, where we are going to look at SBRs and the AR pistol from a new perspective. So,
It's too bad our resident stamp collector is not here yet.
well, wait a minute. I am a resident stamp collector.
That's true too. That's true too. Sorry.
I just don't have all the same stamps he has.
That's true.
So, let's begin our discussion with SBRs. And so, for the uninitiated, SBRs are, of course, short-barreled rifles. So, what is an SBR in the era of 30-day ATF approvals?
It's under. You're asking the newbie. Okay, I'm on the spot. Under 16.5 inches barrel.
Yeah, SBR is basically a rifle with a barrel less than 16 inches, and there is a minimum overall length that it's shorter than. So the barrel is typically your break point. Under 16 inches on an AR, and you're going to be an SBR. So have you ever really kind of had that nagging desire to go out and get yourself an SBR?
Every day.
So what do you know about what's required to do? Just that.
Well, I mean, for an SBR, I know that you're going to have to do a tax stamp for it. The tax stamps are, what, $200, I think, for the SBR, and
Right.
you file that, and the way everybody talks about it, I know there's some other stuff in the show notes, but I'll just go based on what I've heard. I know that any sort of a tax stamp through the ATF takes a very long time. I know some people are waiting 9 months for suppressor tax stamps,
Right.
or a year. So that's a long wait, and so you have to pay for the SBR. So you're out of pocket however much cash that is. You have to pay for the tax stamp, so you're out of pocket however much cash that is, and then you have to wait however long your waiting period to have the ATF process it. So, you know, maybe you're out of pocket $1,200, $1,500 or more, and then you got to wait 6 months to a year before you can put your hands on the thing you've already paid for.
Now let me clear that up for you.
Please do.
It was not too long ago. I would say in the last 30 to 60 days,
Yeah?
the ATF, which has had some issues of late with their eFile system,
Mm-hmm.
just brought back eFiles for the Form 1 approvals.
Oh.
Form 1 is the ATF form on which you would seek approval for a short-barreled rifle, a short-barreled shotgun, or the manufacturer of a silencer. So if you're an enterprising sort or a qualified machinist, that would be a very good way to come up with a suppressor.
Ooh.
When it comes to the SBR, the process is essentially seek application and then wait for your tax stamp to come back. Upon receipt of the tax stamp, you're required to have some engraving done on the rifle. The engraving has some minimum requirements, which would essentially complete the labeling expectation that the ATF has for a manufacturer, because you've essentially take it upon yourself to build a short-barreled rifle. You're a manufacturer in essence, so you're going to have to put the name of the manufacturer and your city and state on the rifle. So
Oh, no, that's just a vanity piece right there anyway. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, if you've got the name on there right,
Yeah.
you know, the name of the manufacturer in my case is the name of a trust that I created for my ATF items. Of course, I want to let everybody know that isn't aware, I am an attorney licensed in the state of my residence, Texas, and so I have a practice whose background is geared towards the estate planning side, and I have a deep foundation in the Internal Revenue Service and tax controversy and compliance work, so I understand the ATF components in as much as their administrative side goes, and of course the tax stamp is basically dovetailed into the Internal Revenue Service's collection system. I feel I'm in kind of a unique position to create my own trust, and I don't think I'll ever be dissatisfied and find myself suing myself for malpractice. So I'm not really too
hang on. There's always the possibility you can become schizophrenic at some point.
I think there is always that possibility. I doubt
that does exist
in the family, but well, so what I'm getting at is, obviously there is a wide spectrum of opinions on the utility of people with my background. There are a lot of people that actually think that a good start would be all of us on the bottom of the ocean. However, whatever that opinion is, I do think that it's important you understand the only way that you can get into the eFile system is if you are filing your Form 1 as a trust. It will not work any other way. And so,
interesting.
Because of that, well, I don't want to say any other way. I don't know about corporations. They may be able to e-file. But individuals may not. And there is the problem. Most people who get into the idea of tax stamp collecting do so from either the position of the trust because of its low overhead, unlike a corporation, or from the perspective of an individual because they have people in their communities, as far as your law enforcement community, who are willing to cooperate with the application process. So if you're not doing a trust, you're not eligible for the e-system, and that means that you're going to have to wait that 9 months to 12 months to go through the system. I mean, of course, things are changing, but I don't know that you're going to go from 9 months to 2 months. It's probably 9 months to 8.5 months. With the addition of additional, ATF agents. So that's not really going to, impress anybody if you're having to wait that long. still, once you get your trust and you go through the system and you get to the point of having your tax stamp come back, you now have to, like I said, put the name of the manufacturer and your city and state on your item. So that means that you have to find someone who, at the very least, can, under the CFR, the regs that control the minimum requirements, which are, I think, depth and size and some other specs. Or you go to somebody who, has an intimate understanding, because that's what they do. Now, I know in my area there are two companies. One's, I believe, in Rockwall, Texas, and the other one's, I think, in Fort Worth, Texas, who can do the engraving. They're companies that specialize in that kind of work. They have a number of other interfaces with the firearms industry. But with regard to what my needs are, it's just engraving. So I would take, with my tax stamp, my lower to my engraver and have them mark my lower with the name of my trust and the city and state of my residence. Easy peasy, and we're done. So what does that all mean? I mean, that really means that, providing that my engraver's workload is such that they can get me in and out in a fairly reasonable amount of time, you're looking at an SBR in anywhere from 30 to 60 days.
Awesome.
I think that is awesome. That is a pretty short run. And
you hold all the parts in your hands the whole time, too.
No, you can't.
So you have to. Well, okay, so let me ask newbie question.
Okay.
I have an existing lower, or maybe a new lower that I purchased, and I want to have it as an SBR. If I don't have a lower that is already registered as an SBR, I don't get the barrel? Is that what it is?
I would. Here's basically the thing. The requirement in basic terms is essentially something that's readily convertible. Can be, and I'm not quoting from the regs or the code, so the phraseology is going to be different. But the idea is that I cannot have the parts in my possession to where it would be really easy to finish the build. So you buy that 10.3 inch upper receiver assembly, from one of the retailers, like a Bravo Company Manufacturing is selling a lot of short-barreled upper receiver assemblies. It's a pivot pin and a takedown pin away from being an SBR. The ATF isn't going to have a keen view on that if somebody walks into your house and finds it. And
Yeah, but at this point, if you let's say that so the safest way to go about doing this would be just take a lower, because now at this point this lower could be used for a regular rifle build, could be used for anything, because you don't have a stock on it. It's just a lower receiver, period, without all the parts and pieces right now.
Okay, strip.
Just I'm saying that's what you got, a stripped lower. You don't have anything else, and it's already in your possession. You can use that, file everything, have it engraved, and as long as you haven't already purchased all the parts and pieces for the upper, if the ATF decides to come in your house, you're fine. And then once it's engraved, you can go ahead and buy your upper pieces, which are easy to get, quickly shipped, and then go ahead and finish your build.
You can get your upper pieces, but what I would tell you, I mean, from my perspective as an attorney, is I would say don't buy your barrel. You buy everything else don't buy your barrel. Because, you know, I've got the tools in my house where if I had the barrel, there's no doubt that in very short order I could have it assembled.
Right. Now, would you be covered? I know you can't speak from a legal perspective. Just in general, do you think, and impression-wise, if you can even answer this, if you would even care to answer this, if I were to take that barrel and put it in a safety deposit box at the bank, so that it was, you know, it was there, or the lower before it was engraved, if I had all the other parts of my house, if I put something critical to the build in a location that was totally separate and locked off, I would assume that an ATF agent would walk in and go, well, you've applied for your stamp, you've locked a part up in a location outside of your house, it can only be accessed during normal business hours, can't be accessed by anybody else, and you don't have anything illegal because it's not put together. I mean, that's I don't know.
I wouldn't say that you're clear. I mean, here's the thing that I would say. The ATF agent walks into your house, he's not going to see a barrel.
Right.
If he doesn't see a barrel, then he's not going to think you can build one. If he knows you've got a, you know, barrel, I would say you're in violation of the law.
Gotcha.
Now, you know, I think that really when it comes down to it, a lot of this stuff comes down to.
Hello, Siri.
Gentlemen, Apple has apparently decided that I should be able to make my phone activate from across the room by saying some magic words, which apparently I've said twice this evening.
That's just great. So anyway, the lesson being, don't buy your barrel.
Well, and you know, here's the thing. You know, I don't think that the ATF goes around looking to see if they can find people to arrest. You know, I don't.
Because I mean, you're trying to abide by the law. You're waiting to put it together. You know, but still, in the case of being safe, if you just want to be ultra safe, you don't buy the barrel.
Well, and I think my reading of the law is that that's what it says. You know, do not have the parts. If you do not have your tax stamp and you don't have your lower engraved, don't have the barrel.
Yeah, and there's no way possible that they can do anything at that point, because those parts, if you've got all the other parts, they could be used for a regular rifle build with a longer barrel sticking out the end.
Exactly. So. Exactly. And I mean, even if you had a, you know, pistol-length gas system, I don't think that that is the part. It's the barrel. You have a short barrel, and you don't have your tax stamp, and you don't have your lower engraved, I think you're in trouble. You know, this is theory, you know, because the practical matter is that I don't think the ATF is going to come knock on your door. You know, there's no reason unless you're basically a drug dealer, you know, trafficker of firearms. You know, if you're on their radar screen, it's probably because you guys are doing something you shouldn't be doing. So, but I mean, that's, I think, the letter and the spirit of the law. Just don't get the barrel until you got all the other pieces in place. And you know, I think, you know, like a lot of things that are about our industry, the sport, the hobby, the things that we do, we all get excited. We want to kind of get ready. We want to be on the bleeding edge of something. And I know that a lot of us have been kind of burned because we wanted to go somewhere with something, and all of a sudden there's a tragedy and prices go through the roof, and you didn't quite get that last thing you needed, and now it's going to be a year and a half before one comes on the market that you pay retail for, because you can get one right after the tragedy, but it's going to cost you 6 times what it ought to cost. You know, it's no fun, but I preach to my clients, you know, here's the law, but I don't make my clients' decisions. They do. And I try to play it safe, because at the end of the day, I'm not willing to edge so close to the law that someone thinks that I've traveled clean over it. I'm just conservative in that way. But you know, so I think that that is really where the issue stands. Now, I will go so far as to say, if you have a receiver that is a pistol by designation and manufacturer. You can have a lower or an upper receiver that's got, a 3-inch barrel if that's what you want. Any short barrel attached to a pistol lower is fine. And any pistol lower can be designated an SBR. So
I know that. Interesting.
So you can be in that middle ground with that configuration.
So you could basically build an AR pistol, not have to worry about tax stamps, decide you want to add a stock to it, which would turn it into an SBR. Before you buy the stock, you get everything done, you file for your tax stamp, you receive your tax stamp, you get your engraving done, and then you can buy your stock.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you still got an AR pistol you can enjoy.
Exactly. And I think you got one or two ways to go on that whole issue of a stock. I don't think the ATF would bust your chops because you have a stock. If you have another AR, I think you're fine. I think, you've got that perspective of what we'll talk about next, which is the stabilizing brace attached to a, receiver extension, buffer tube, however you want to phrase it. Or you've got a pistol-specific receiver extension, which is usually the neoprene-covered receiver extension that doesn't have the milling in it for a stock. It doesn't have the little kind of key end milling that's going to index and set up your multi-position stock. So with the latter, you can't put an AR stock on it and make it a rifle. With the former, as long as you've got that, ATF approved non-stock thing on it, it can look like an AR all day long. It's not. It can look like an SBR, I mean. So I think that you're probably in a much better position that if you're going to really straddle the line and try to push it all the way to the edge of what the spirit and letter of the law mean. So going back to SBRs, so when you're looking at a 60-day turnaround, all things being equal, that's not bad as far as what your investment of time and waiting is. For a suppressor, realistically, your suppressor retailer is going to expect you to pay either a good sized down payment or perhaps all of the payment for that item. And so to be out the money and then be 9 months to a year out on approval, that's a little frustrating. And you have to be in a position where that's okay for that to even be something that most consumers would consider. I mean, who would pay, essentially the cost of a rifle or a pistol only to not be able to touch it for 12 months? I mean, I think I'd have a problem with that. So 60 days is, I think, very tolerable. So, here's my take on it, Anthony. It's still a $200 tax stamp, so you have crossed over into that, area where the ATF has regulatory control. You've got a tax stamp. You're part of that mechanism for those controlled items, and you're stepping into that arena pretty decisively. No different than if you were to buy a suppressor. No different than if you were to buy a machine gun. So, you're still in the, tall weeds with the big dogs. But as far as kind of an entry level, that's kind of like the gateway drug for stamp collectors, an SBR, because it's only the $200 tax stamp. You're going to get a lower receiver if you're going to get an AR no matter what, because that's the only way the rifle's going to work. And
I would assume the barrels are a little cheaper than a standard barrel just because there's less metal in them. Would that be an accurate statement? Just a little less.
Unfortunately, there's not all that much difference.
Oh.
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange that you would have something that would be a half or a third of the length of your normal barrel, and you're not going to pay half or a third of the price. You might pay $20 less, but and I don't know why. You know,
Well,
other
maybe most of the cost is not in the manufacturing of the barrel. The large majority of the cost is in, the design and testing and overhead that's in the company, and
like
payoff for the have to make the barrel. So then all that is equal, and the materials are not really that much of a deal.
yeah, you're amortizing the cost of your equipment and your machinists and your tooling to the run of barrels. And I think that realistically, the actual core materials cost of a barrel is pretty insubstantial. I don't know what 8 pounds of raw steel costs, but I'm sure it's a whole lot less than what the finest precision barrels are going to run. The rest of it is what they're going to put into that barrel to make it shoot in a way that pleases you. So, the good thing about the SBR is with an eFile system, you're going to be in that stamp collector club with relatively little in the way of cash outlay and time investment. You have crossed over into an arena where you might need to have professional help because of the involvement of a trust. And, I know a lot of people will sit and talk to you about how, just get the will thing and the software will do it. I could tell you at length all the reasons why that's a bad idea, and none of them have anything to do with making a living, because I'm going to make a living regardless of whether you come to me or not. And in fact, because of the reluctance of people to use lawyers, I don't think lawyers who are in that expect to make a great deal of money doing NFA trusts. But I do think that it's worthwhile to, at the very least, have someone with some experience involved in your coming into that trust. So, what they say, word to the wise ought to be sufficient. So, I kind of like where it is now. Of course, it's like all things. If everybody and their dog starts doing, e-filed Form 1 SBRs, a 30-day turnaround might turn into a 3-month, and then it might turn into a 6-month, and who knows. Right now, 30 days, I think if you're an early adopter, that might be a pretty awesome thing to do to get yourself your first tax stamp and essentially your first SBR. So now let's talk about AR pistols in the era of stabilizing braces. So, Anthony, what do you know about this ATF letter and SIG's stabilizing brace?
Oh boy. I've actually seen a copy of the letter in one of our previous shows. We talked about it just very, very briefly. So I have had a chance to see a copy of the letter, and I'm no lawyer, so to me the language is not 100% clear. I think that there does seem to be some room for interpretation there. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it doesn't seem like It does sound like what they're trying to do is give you the option to be able to do that, to be able to use a pistol and a brace, because they don't believe that it doesn't have the same functionality, even though it might be similar. I don't know. I mean, the wording to me was a little bit muddy. That's what I can say, and that's what I'd read about it too. Was that it seemed just a little bit muddy. What did you think?
Well, of course, I put this into the perspective of my, tax knowledge base and dealing with the IRS. What you essentially have is a request for an opinion. SIG develops a product. They take the product, a sample of the product, and they send it to the ATF, and they ask them a question as it relates to the product. So somebody over at the ATF takes the question, they take the product, they begin to go through their knowledge base and understanding of what they have. They go through the ATF's internal system, and there's probably a handbook of some sort for their engineers and their technicians, their armorers to use in their evaluation process. The IRS has one very similar when it comes to an audit. They then formulate an opinion. And, of course, it's not something that happens in a vacuum. It's not like they, randomly receive letters and then, hey, let's just send this one out to Fred in Nebraska and, the little, back office laboratory, 5 stories underground. No. It is taken care of in their main facility out there, and I'm sure at some level there is some collaboration amongst senior level ATF personnel to figure out where they should stand on something. We saw one of these letters when tactical fire control trigger system came out. They sent a letter in to have the ATF look at it and tell them whether that third position switch was in any way making this a fully automatic weapon. The ATF made their opinion and their ruling. They sent the letter back to the company. So here in this case, SIG says, hey, does this make my pistol a rifle or an illegal SBR? And the ATF sent back their opinion, their ruling, and they said, no, it doesn't. So they outlined how they got to that place, and I think that's where the mud is. Because with different personnel, maybe different senior staff, they might have made a different ruling. And if there were pressure from higher above, they may very well be put in a position where there is some pressure to change their ruling.
Yeah, it can always be changed. It can be reversed.
And I think that is the only concern, that you're going to have someone come in and say, okay, well, upon further review, we've gone 180 degrees on this, and if you have one of these, your pistol is now an SBR that is unregistered, and you need to fix that. Are we there yet? No. And as far as I know, the ATF has not delivered any, telegraph. They're not telegraphing any signs to anybody that's saying, hey, everybody get ready. This is where we're headed. We're getting ready to put out a ruling. If you have one of these, better throw it away. We haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. And I'm sure there are people that follow it much closer than I do that would be, sounding the horns from on high if that were the case. So from my perspective, really all you were out is $165. And that's not so bad. To have essentially an unregistered SBR until such time as it's reversed, and your only risk is $165, hey, that's okay.
Pretty good, yeah. Mm-hmm. I like it.
And so, let's talk about why that is the case and where we started from. So, A lower receiver in an AR can be designated as having been manufactured a pistol or manufactured a rifle. So when you manufacture a pistol, your lower receiver now has the character of a pistol. It can have a barrel shorter than 16 inches on it. So with that, you have to follow the requirements that it not have a stock. Because to put a stock on that short-barreled pistol turns it into a short-barreled rifle, and you are now in trouble. So like we talked about earlier, I think typically people see the AR pistols with a round receiver extension that just has a neoprene or foam cover on it, and it doesn't have the indexing components that are going to allow a stock to attach. The other approach now would be to have one of these stabilizers on what is essentially a rifle receiver extension. And the stabilizing brace with the ATF blessing keeps it an AR pistol. So from that perspective, you're still golden as long as you have the ATF in your corner. Now, with that pistol, the ATF has made it clear that you can put a stock on it if you put a barrel on it that is over 16 inches. You've then made it a legal rifle, and it is something that you can own in that configuration. So you haven't destroyed its original serial number designation, that of being a pistol. And I think that that's one interesting...
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. You know, the issue of being only out $165 is the issue that if the ATF ever changes its mind, you get rid of your brace and now you're back to compliance. You have an AR pistol that has a receiver extension that doesn't have a stock on it.
What would you think if you had multiple AR pistols? And you wanted to get the stock. You were building another AR and you had a stock laying around, but you have like 2 or 3 pistols. The stock laying around should not be an issue since you do have the parts for a full AR. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And no means to actually hook the stock up if it's a pistol anyway, unless you replace the whatever it is, or buffer tube and stuff. Yeah.
And I would clearly, if I'm going to have an AR pistol and I'm going to rely on that ATF approval, playing it safe, I'm going to have up in my closet that legal, receiver extension buffer tube that is going to make it compliant if I have the rug jerked out from under me. So the difference between that and, say, the SBR is this. Once it has a tax stamp, that's basically an NFA item. And, it is really hard to basically take it off of the rolls at ATF and not have it be basically governed by some oversight. Also, you're out the money for the engraving. You can't undo the engraving. You certainly are going to have some problems selling your lower, because most people are more interested in going out and getting their lower machined with their original name instead of having to take yours, transfer it through the ATF, go out and figure out what compliance piece needs to be put in place to take the name of the old manufacturer off and put your name on it as a transferee. If that's even the appropriate step, it may not be, but it becomes problematic. All of that is just going to muddy the water so much that I think your first instinct with an SBR is to say, well, I'm not going to buy yours, I'll make my own. With your AR pistol, you may be able to sell your stabilizing brace. I mean, even though it will not make another AR pistol a legal SBR if the ATF jerks the rug out, but it's still a stock. I don't know how much you'll be able to get for it, but even at that, still, you're only out the $165, and your lower receiver is still there for you to use. When it comes down to it, I think that you're really kind of at almost an on par 6 one way, half a dozen the other decision between an AR pistol with a stabilizing brace to give you essentially an ATF legal SBR, and the idea of getting an SBR, run through the ATF eFiled system, which basically, with the investment of time being so shortened, really kind of brings you almost on par with what it is to get an AR pistol and make it that way. So which way do you jump? I don't know, Anthony?
I mean, I'm going to go pistol route for sure. And I'm gonna go ahead and when I file that thing to become an SBR, I'm gonna go ahead and do another. I guess you would do a separate Form 1 for a suppressor.
Yeah, but it would be a Form 4 for a suppressor.
Yeah, Form 4 for a suppressor, and then I'm gonna start that weight on my suppressor.
Right.
Well, now if I was gonna manufacture a suppressor, it'd still be a Form 1, right?
True. But I mean,
so yeah, I would probably try to make my own suppressor just for giggles. I mean, if I can do it for $200 and the cost of some raw materials and a buddy's machine shop somewhere.
That's an interesting point, because really, if you're 30 days out from approvals, that would really, really make that a very attractive option. But I think here's one thing to consider, and I know that we didn't really initially think to talk about suppressors in this discussion, but if you're going to Form 1 a suppressor, and I have not looked at the requirements, so I really don't know whether you're required to give, plans, specs,
schematics, yeah,
materials list, schematic. I don't know if you are, but my guess is you would be required to do that. So number one, you have to know what it is you're building before you even open the Form 1. I think number two, obviously, if you're going to be a kitchen, garage or backyard shed, machine shop, I think that realistically you're missing out on technological advancements and capabilities that are in what we see in the markets, readily available suppressors. So I don't know what that means in terms of real performance. I don't know what that means in terms of lifespan of what you're making. I don't know those. So I think it's an interesting thought experiment, and I think certainly if you were a trained machinist, I'm not. I would love to have that skill set. I'd love to have that equipment, but I'm not, and I don't. So for me, that is a huge burden to get across. But I think that's a hell of a good point, Anthony. I'd love to do that.
Well, if you're going to go SBR, you want to go suppressed.
Well, and that is my intention. I'm already, I'm probably halfway through my wait for what I've got in the pipeline, which I'm going to
Awesome.
be excited to share with the listeners when that comes to pass. Of course,
Hey!
still in the waiting period, and by share it means waving it in front of the camera and gloating just a little bit.
You get to do a lot of that already anyway. Be quiet.
Not as much as our host, JW.
Yeah,
Who
I know.
seems to have all the fancy toys.
I know, I'm jealous.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit too. If I'd have been collecting these long before I had children, I'd be further ahead. But
Oh, I can only imagine.
oh well, it is what it is. So which way do you jump? Um, here's my thought. I want to go the tax stamp route, irregardless, because I think that is the um, no foul way to get the SBR with the least amount of uncertainty. My concern, of course, with the AR pistol is that, wanting to go the tax stamp route, I've added the extra step and the extra cost. If they were to, reverse course on the decision before I got to the tax stamp position, I'm still at the $165, but I'm still headed into the $200 tax stamp arena, so I'm kind of still wasting that money. So, all things being equal, from my perspective, I think I would go the route of the SBR from the beginning.
Yeah, me too. Makes sense.
So, Anthony, before we lose you there to fatigue, why don't we cover some feedback here? I think
Sure, man.
we've talked the issue of the SBR to death at this point. I guess before we get started, guys, if you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to talk to you. I know Anthony would be happy to just talk to anybody because
Yeah.
seems like a low fellow.
I need friends, please. Our first piece of feedback comes from Rob L. And he says the cost of litigious lawyers baked into gun prices? Question mark. So how much of a gun's price is CYA for potential lawsuits? Thank you, trial lawyers. What do you think?
So I would say that it's probably the exact same amount as you would find in a pencil, a cup of hot coffee, a Boeing jet. What is it? A Ford Explorer? Aren't those the ones that had the rollover? Toyotas.
All right, now I'll make fun of my Fords. Watch out.
But I think the reality is that everything has the cost of lawyers baked into it because if the trial lawyers can make a buck suing you because of it, then that's what they'll do. That's how they make a living. So I don't think it's really any different than what you would find in virtually any other consumer item. I would almost say that because the manufacturers have been much better at staying out of the courtroom on those regards, coffee sellers, retailers have a higher cost of litigation thrown into their cup of coffee than anybody else out there.
That's amazing, but probably true.
McDonald's, right?
Yep.
So let's see. Todd writes in, now that I have my AR finished and ready to shoot, I've been looking at different ammo. Cost is my major concern, but I do not want to damage my new gun either. So I have a few questions. So his predicates, his key info is that he's shooting ranges at ranges that do not allow FMJ ammo, and he has a 16-inch 109 twist 5.56 chambered barrel. So he starts off with question 1, steel versus brass. Steel seems to be cheapest, but will it cause problems with my gun, or will it misfire, etc.? You know, I don't think that most of your Russian surplus or Russian manufactured steel ammo is going to be, you know, bad quality. It's not going to cause like a, you know, catastrophic failure or misfires or things like that. I think the problem is just ordinarily that either you're going to have an AR that likes running the lacquered or the, you know, zinc or whatever the steel is, or it doesn't. And I don't know that anybody has figured out a way to make one like it that doesn't. And nobody can duplicate.
I'm going to work on that.
Yeah. But
you know, my rifle doesn't like the lacquered steel.
Right.
It fires it, but it doesn't cycle. So.
And I have one that loves it. It won't discriminate one way or the other. But I'll tell you, here's the thing that you have to worry about when you're talking about Russian steel-cased ammo or Eastern European steel-cased ammo. You have to be careful of a bimetal jacket. You do not want to fire down your barrel something that has a steel jacket. I think it's Lucky Gunner did a in-depth ammo test. Is that who did it? Was it Lucky Gunner?
I think it was what we saw, yeah. That's the article. It's covered in one of our previous episodes, I believe.
Right. The bimetal stuff is going to tear up your barrel. Steel on steel is not a good thing, and it's not your friend, so you want to avoid that. Next, mail order ammo using wikiarms.com to locate least expensive. Is there problems with mail ordering ammo, or should I just go to the nearest store? He says he has an Academy, Cabela's, cheaper than dirt, all within 30 miles. I've never had a problem with mail order ammo. You know, obviously you've got steep shipping potentially because, I mean, you're basically shipping lead through the mail. Everything is by weight, and I don't think you can ship, you know, for any given space anything heavier than lead, right? So, you know, between your shipping costs and your sales tax, whenever you can find the best break-even point, I think go with that. Anthony, have you similar experience in your thoughts? Now, Anthony, if you're speaking to me,
My mute. Yeah, sorry, my mute was on. So I'll go back real quick, back to item number 1. I apologize. But I just was looking up that Lucky Gunner article, and that was just in case any of our listeners are interested in that discussion. We did do that discussion in the feedback section of ARP82.
Okay.
That was where we had that. Mail ordering ammo, I haven't had any issues. I ordered from Cabela's. Now that was in December of 2012. It was just as all the mess was going on.
Right.
And so availability was a serious issue. Cabela's was very good to me. When I ordered my 223, and I had placed a bulk order, and they came back and said there's going to be a delay, and we're going to compensate you. I think it was like a $15 ammo can, something like that,
Nice.
for my order. So that was really nice of them. I appreciated that, and have continued to order stuff from Cabela's, partially because of that.
Now, I'll tell you, there are some retailers that will basically charge you shipping as they have to bear it, and so the heavier the item, the more shipping. I've found other retailers that are going to charge you a flat rate, and to the degree that you got a flat rate, and that's not going to change, I think that's a heck of a way to go. But yeah, I think it really is a matter of, you know, personal preference on where that break-even point is. So whichever one ends up being cheaper, do that. All right, his number 3 is grain. So he's talking about bullet weight. He says, I
Are you
read,
sure you don't talk about wheat?
yeah, I'm pretty sure. I read and have researched till I am blue in the face regarding twist rates. I purchased my barrel asking for a 1 in 7, but when I got home, I noticed it was 1 in 9. So I'm stuck with that because I don't want to deal with the store I got it from due to customer service. Sorry to hear that. It sounds like your customer service experience was a
Yes.
bad one.
Horrible.
I plan on target shooting at the range most of the time and just want the right grain that will show off my new scope and rifle. So what grain, hollow point or soft point, do I look for? You know, here's the thing. You're going to see the heavier bullets perform best in a faster twist barrel. I think about let's see, what is it? About 69 grains. I think my Sierra bullets begin to indicate that you should have at least a 1 in 8 or a 1 in 7 twist barrel. I'm thinking it's about a 69 grain bullet. I shoot a 77 grain bullet, and it definitely wants a 1 in 8 or a 1 in 7. So with what you're going to probably find from most manufacturers is either a 55 or a 62 grain bullet. And I would say that you're going to get decent performance out of a 1 in 9 twist barrel with either of those two. And I would say probably anything under 69. The longer the barrel, with muzzle velocities upwards of 3,000, 3,100, 3,200 square feet per second, I think that there's some suggestion that might, out of a 1 in 9, give you enough travel to put the right amount of spin on that projectile to give you the performance you need. Ultimately, if I send a bullet out the barrel faster, it's going to spin faster out of a given twist rate if the barrel is longer than if it is shorter. So, 2,700 feet out of a 1 in 9 16-inch barrel is going to not be as stabilized as 3,200 feet per second out of a 20-inch barrel with a 1 in 9 twist. So you're gonna find that there's a sweet spot with your setup, but I really think that probably under 69 grains, somewhere in there is going to be something you like. I found a 63 grain bullet that I've done loads for. 63 soft point and a 65 grain bullet. If you're willing to do hand loads, you might be able to custom make something that's going to really just, it's going to be that sweet spot for your rifle. As far as, your tip, whether it's like a hollow point or a match bullet or some kind of a soft point, it's whatever you can find is what really it comes down to. But if you figure out what, bullet weight and the speed that works best, then you just kind of duplicate with that. Whether you can load it yourself or you find it out commercially, you figure out what the good ammo is for your rifle, and you just keep on seeking it. So he says, do you need to beware of reloads? So here's the thing. If it's remanufactured, I think Freedom Munitions, Black Hills, was it Ultramax? I think they'll do remanufactured stuff. I wouldn't have a problem shooting that all day long. If you're going to go to a gun show, that guy with the little baggies of reloaded ammunition on his table, I wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't even entertain giving that guy my money. Not talking bad about the guy, but the reality is that with reloading, there's enough that can go wrong that.
Yeah, you don't want a squib that you miss.
Yeah, or
Your barrel.
Double load, or a hot load that's gonna blow up your chamber.
Blow up in your face. Yep.
And I tell you, I'm sure you'd be able to find that guy every single weekend if he's going to make money off of you. But the first time you show up with a complaint, I'm thinking that you're going to have a hard time tracking him down. So yeah, remanufactured from a company, I think you're going to be fine. Reloads, no, I'd stay away from those all day long. So Todd put in a picture of his rifle. It's a really nice rifle, but we don't have the space in the show notes for that. So, Todd, maybe you can throw that up on Flickr for us, and that'll give some of the listeners an opportunity to see your hard work. But thanks for the feedback. Thanks for writing in. We appreciate you. So, Anthony, why don't you take Hugh?
Yeah, so Hugh writes into us, "Hey guys, I just got finished listening to your podcast on silencers suppressors and thought it was great and super informative. I wanted to share a link that I thought you guys would like. It shows the different baffle designs for about 100 different suppressors from the old to the new. It's very cool to see all the different ways people use to solve the same problem. It even has cutaway pics for the suppressor disasters, including one where a guy dumped 30-round mag of 300 blackout on full auto through 5.56 can. 12 rounds sheared off and made it through the core. The others piled up the first baffle." Poor guy. You guys talked about, he sends a link to that breakout article on all the 100 different suppressors, which that's definitely something we want to take a look at. He says, it goes on to say, "You guys talked about the OSS suppressor in your podcast, but didn't know too much about it. I've shot one to say in his lefties, you dig it. They may not be the quietest, but they only have about 10% of the increased back pressure that suppressors normally add. So there's no blowback in your face and far less wear on the gun. That's cool."
Yeah.
Goes on to say, on a completely unrelated note, I have a 15-inch BCM KMR rail on my Daniel Defense, and I absolutely love it. One of the unintended benefits of having a key mod rail is you can weave paracord through the holes and make it a light, cheap, durable handguard. That's interesting. I like that. You can also change the colors and patterns as often as you like for only about 50 cents worth of material. That's true. Nice decorative touch as well. I've attached a pic so you can see what I mean. Just be sure that you wrap it tight so none of it's actually touching the actual barrel. And start with a longer piece than you think you need. Trust me, it sucks balls, excuse the language, when you run out of about 80% through and have to unweave all your work and cut the piece and start over. Yeah, that would be pretty awful. Really would be. He wraps up saying, "Keep up the good work. Show has improved so much since the beginning, it's not even funny." We definitely appreciate that feedback there, Hugh.
Absolutely. Thank you for writing in. And I took a look at the link there, and I think it's an interesting link. Definitely a must-see. So come on over and look at the show notes, and you can follow Hugh's link. So let's close out with Rob L., who writes in, 45 AR-15. Have you guys covered 45 ACP AR-15s? He says, "I know you did 9mm a while back. I understand that there are several 45 uppers available. Maybe revisit pistol caliber ARs. I put a 45 AR on my wish list, even with the higher cost of 45 ammo. I bet that many smarter AR owners have 45 ACPs. Actually, I haven't found any uppers. I mean, there's like a 458 SOCOM, which is essentially a 45 caliber, but the 458 SOCOM bullet is not an ACP. That does lend itself to the fact that there are bolts, more than likely, and barrels that can handle the 45 caliber bullet, but frankly, I've never come across that combination. And I wonder if it might not be because really when you're talking about the 45 as a cartridge, I think a lot of the platforms that shoot the 45 ACP, I think they're steel. And I don't know whether aluminum would hold up to the abuse. I think like the Chris Vector, that's a pretty well built system that I don't think is relying on aluminum components for the workhorse component of that platform. Of course, you've got the Thompson, you've got the 1911, and I've seen some, I think, what is it, Caltech, I think has some kind of a 45 caliber carbine, but I haven't seen it in an AR, and I think that Anthony's over there feverishly looking it up.
Yeah, I found a 45 ACP ARs from Bazooka Brothers, and actually from Olympic Arms.
So there you go. Now it's not a 458, right?
No, it's 45 ACP.
All right. Why don't you throw those two in the show notes, those links, and we'll have them there for the listeners. But
yeah,
it's not something that I've seen, and frankly, I think that if you're going to talk lowers, I mean, they've got to be using the standard Glock mags, or I don't know what they do. Maybe a Thompson magazine. I don't know, but
Well, I'll get the link up here, and you can take a look real quick. There's one. You can see a link to the mag. It's kind of interesting. There's no curve to it whatsoever. It's just straight.
Right. Well, and with the ACP, you don't have a lip on it,
right?
Rim on it to affect you, and it's a straight wall cartridge, so no worries there. That's pretty darned interesting. I don't know. I'm not so much a fan of the idea, but I guess there might be someone out there that's really into it. So I think that wraps up our feedback for the evening. Certainly, we welcome you all to head on over to the show notes and take a look at what we've got from our listeners. And of course, Rob is one of our staunch feedback deliverers. He is stream of consciousness, always delivering some interesting questions to us. So keep it up, Rob. Although I have suspect that Rob just writes us questions and he doesn't actually listen to our episodes. So.
Oh, come on. Maybe. Hey, Rob, prove to us that you're a real guy. Send us something on our SpeakPipe plugin on the AR-15podcast.com homepage.
And we do have some SpeakPipe feedback, but of course.
Yes.
I don't know how to play it, so I was going to rely on your technical expertise, Anthony. But I think that we may be past the point of actually preparing for that momentous occasion.
We can do that next week.
Okay. But even at that, we will get to it. You just surprised us. And that's not an indicator to the rest of you guys to not use the audio feedback, because we really like to hear from you. And it makes us feel like we have real live people listening to the show instead of our mothers who leave us feedback multiple times. So I think that pretty much covers another really great show. With that, why don't we get started with the outro? You want to get us rolling on that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, guys, in case you don't remember, we do have a giveaway going on. It goes on through the end of September. So we are giving away a custom rifle. Reed mentioned it at the very beginning of the show. So please go check that out. There are several ways you can join. You can find out all the information on how to get into that giveaway by going to AR-15podcast.com/winner. Take a look at the details on the rifle. Take a look at the 3 different ways you can join, and make sure you do all of those by September 30th. Please make sure you send us questions, comments to feedback@AR-15podcast.com, or as Reed said, leave us some voicemail, and we'll get to those next week on the SpeakPipe plugin on the AR-15podcast.com website. Of course, you can subscribe and listen to the AR-15 podcast for free. If you're finding us via YouTube or maybe a link on Facebook, head over to firearmsradio.tv/iTunes, and you can listen to us and get a subscription so you can keep with us every week. Be sure to leave us an iTunes review. That not only gets you one of the ways to enter in the podcast for the giveaway, if you leave us an actual written review, not just a number of stars, but a written review, it also helps place our show higher in the ranks on the iTunes, which helps expose us to additional listeners, which gives us more bargaining power to bring you better content. If you listen to us on the Stitcher app, make sure you leave us a review there, because that is one of your other ways to get in on the giveaway as well. Plus, it also helps us with Stitcher. Go over to Flickr.com if you haven't been there in a while. Go to flickr.com/groups/Black Rifle and send us a picture of your rig. We'd like to keep up with those and make sure we can see them. And you can watch us live on Monday nights. We record Mondays on Monday evenings, and you can see us live there and follow us on Google+. And we put out those announcements on Google+ when we go live at firearmsradio.tv/plus. You can catch our show after the fact on YouTube at youtube.com/firearmsradio. You can follow all the other wonderful things that are going on Firearms Radio over there at YouTube as well, or you can also find the FRN on Facebook at facebook.com/firearmsradio. Of course, there are tons of other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network. I'm going to give a shout out to the Guns of Hollywood podcast. This is my second podcast of the evening, so I've got a twofer. And we did season 3 of The Walking Dead, so that'll come out, I think, in a couple of weeks over there. They film a couple of weeks ahead. But be sure you go over and check out those other podcasts that are available at firearmsradio.tv. And as always, we owe Brownells tons and tons and tons for the wonderful sponsorship they do for us. So make sure you use the Brownells affiliate link for all of your AR-15 parts, which you can get us at ar15podcast.com/parts. And when you go to Amazon, do you go to Amazon, Reed?
I think I'd probably go to Amazon at least,
I think so, maybe.
Once every 12 hours in the day.
Once every 12 hours or so. So if you head over to Amazon, go to firearmsradio.tv first and click on the Amazon link that's there. That will not cost you anything, not change the price of anything that you shop, but will give us just a little teeny tiny piece that helps us pay for the cost of the servers and the big old $0 salaries that all of us wonderful hosts bring in. So really it does help. It does help pay for the servers, help pay for the bandwidth that's used for our several thousands of listeners that we have here on our podcast, and the multiple tens of thousands of listeners that listen to all the shows across the Firearms Radio Network. So we encourage you guys to go over to firearmsradio.tv again, click on the Amazon link, and enjoy your wonderful Amazon purchase that you would have enjoyed anyway.
Well, there you go. Well, guys, listeners, thank you so much for another great episode. We'll be back next week. We're going to finish out the eligible window for the contest in just 8 days, so don't forget to get yourself signed up if you haven't already. And hey, it's a real live contest with a limited number of people.
Yep.
Get
so
out
you're,
there. You got better odds than if it were the lottery to win an AR, and
way better odds than if it were the lottery.
Absolutely. So, we want to encourage you to get out there and just, get some fire in you and get signed up everywhere you can.
Yep. Yeah, Reed, this is our last episode that will actually go out on the feed before the contest closes. We'll record next Monday.
Yeah.
But that one may or may not get out before on the feed. This could be our last episode before the 30th. So.
Yeah, it will absolutely be our last episode that the listeners will listen to before the 30th. So, of course, we'll plug it next week.
When we go live, yep.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll keep that in mind. So, we want to encourage you to go out and be a part of this because it's an awesome rifle from an awesome company. And, who wouldn't take a free rifle, right?
That's right.
All right. Guys, we appreciate you. We always enjoy talking with you. And we really do want to hear from you. Write us and talk to you again next week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.